Hey everybody, welcome back to another ST3D video like always on VJ. Today, just to show you here, we're using Cura 3.3.1. We're going to be talking about support settings. We're going to talk about regular support and we're going to talk about tree support, which is fairly new to Cura. I'm going to show you what settings I have inputted in those boxes, and we're gonna go over what the end result comes out to be. So we're gonna start off, like I said, by go ahead and loading in a model. And the reason I'm making this video, guys, because a lot of people out there are having trouble with support settings, and they contacted me and said, hey, what are your settings and how do your prints turn out? So I thought, hey, you know what, why not go ahead and just make a video on it for everybody. So this is the model I'm going to be using in here, and as you can see when we look at it from a bottom view, there are the red portions here which need support. So what are the correct settings? Now, me personally, I'm not saying my settings are perfect, but they work well for me. So I just wanted to share that with you guys and go from there. Now, before we get started, first thing you're going to need to know is if you go to support, you'll see this little gyro here. If you click on it, you can select the same ones that I have here, which is generate support, of course, and then you got the support placement, overhang, pattern, density, and Z distance, and this is the most important part in my opinion, and I'll explain to you why in just a second. Then you got the XY distance, minimum XY distance, and I believe that should be it. Yep, so once you select those guys, you'll see it right here on the right hand side. Placement, of course, everywhere. Now there might be times where you have models where you only want the part that's touching the bed. Let's say if you're printing a mask and it's upside and you put it facing up, so you just want it on the inside. So you can actually go here and change it to touching build plate only. I notice the overhead angle. What this basically means is, let's say if you, this part right here, okay, based on the angle that it's at, if you look at the tail right here, you might not need the supports here. Get a better view. So you might not need supports here, but as soon as it hits 50 degrees as far as angle or more, it's gonna start adding supports. So that's basically what this is. And you can change this to add supports after 55 or 60 or whatever you want. They actually have models on Thingiverse that you can download to test what is the capability of your printer and what percentage you need to start adding support. So I'll put a link to that at the bottom for you. As far as the pattern, I like zigzag, guys. I don't know why, I've always used it. It always works out well for me. It just makes it easier when you're removing it. Now, support density. This is something I was mistaken about when I first started. In my opinion, or my way of thinking, was the lower this is, the easier it is to remove. Yes, that is correct because your support density is not that strong. Now, I don't turn this up a lot. I go maybe about 15 at most. You can go up to 30, 40, 50, even 60. I mean, hell, you can even do 100. But the tricky part is the Z support distance. And these two actually go hand in hand. What I mean by that is, let's go ahead and take a look in layer view. And while it's doing that, I will explain to you what I'm actually talking about. So normally if you don't have the Z distance correct, and what Z distance is, basically you'll see here in a second, the supports that are printed, it's the distance between the actual model and the tip of the support of where it holds. So that's why when you guys remove supports, and let's say if this was at 1, it would touch the model more, therefore when you pull it out there's more cleaning to do. Now if you get this support Z distance correct and perfect, you can actually even make the support density 100 and I'll still work just as good. For me, I normally, before I used to leave it at 8, but now I leave it at 10 to 15 as far as the density, because I noticed if I don't make my support strong, these parts here, they tend to fall off sometimes when you're actually doing a print, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about because I'm pretty sure most of you have at least one time have ran into that issue. So if you notice here, okay, the Z support distance, like I was talking about, is this part where it's touching the model and how much of a gap there is. So by the hand or the chin, things like that, and that's what you need to figure out. Now, what works for me, based on multiple printers, test printing with different filaments, between zero point 0.2 and 0.265, I found to be the sweet spot for me. Uh, so you can try in between there and see what works for you. You can go and start with 2 and work your way up. Now, some people might need it lower, but for what I'm going over today, 0.265 is what's going to work. So this is basically the same thing as the support Z distance, but this actually affects your X and Y. So normally I have it set at 0.7, and I believe this one right here, minimum support for XY distance, I have it set at 0.2. So with those settings, I did a few prints. So let me go ahead and show you what those prints look like and how easy it was to remove the support. Alright guys, so here is the model that we were looking at, and I printed this with just standard support. Now keep in mind what I was talking about earlier, the Z distance is basically, as you see this support going up, right here at the top of the ear to where the support is, how much is touching and what the gap is there. Same thing here, if you notice the headpiece, how far the support goes there and what the distance is between the print and the support itself. So this was a pretty bad print for me. A lot of stringing, a lot of issues. Was trying out new filament, didn't really test it out before I did it. So anyway, so let's see how easy it is to remove the supports from this model. So I removed all these supports with my hand. I might have gone a little too high on this one, but like I said, it still worked. And between 2 and 2.2 and 0.265 is where I found my sweet spot to be. Now, after a little bit of cleaning here, I think I'll have a pretty decent model on my hands. So, not too bad at all, guys. So there you go. That's the one of them. Let's go and continue from here. Alright guys, now moving on to tree support, but before we do that, there's something you should know, very important. You cannot generate regular support and tree support at the same time. You have to pick either or. So if you have this generate support checked off, make sure you uncheck it before you move on to tree support. Now once you get to this screen, or this portion is under experimental, you can click on this little gyro, select what I have selected, which we'll go over right now, and enter these values in. Now of course, after you enable tree support, basically you want to do tree support branch angle, which basically is the angle of the brackets using a lower angle to make them more vertical. This is I usually set at 40. Distance, how far apart the branches need to be, 4. Branch diameter I leave as 2. Diameter angle I leave as 5%, and 5 degrees, and then resolution I go with 0.2. Wall thickness is 0.4, and of course tree support wall line count I leave as 1. So these are my tree support options, and I believe most of these are default. I've maybe changed 1 or 2 things in here, but Cura does a pretty good job with the tree support. One thing I will let you guys know is tree support does take a lot of processing power, guys. So if you notice, I selected tree support and my computer is running a little slow today. It's still trying to load the supports for this model here. Given that it's a bigger model, it's scaled up to 300%, which is half of CR10 Z height. It's still working on trying to get this going. So this takes a lot of time. So if you have an older computer, uh, don't freak out. It could take anywhere from a minute to 5 minutes from my experience based on which computer you're using. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is this will take more time because it's basically printing a blanket around your model instead of just straight pillars. Okay, so time is going to be a factor, and the processing power of your computer is going to be a factor in this as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these models, and we'll discuss them and see how easy it is to take off and go from there. Alright, so here's an end result with the tree support. As you can see, not looking very pretty at the moment. There's also one in the background, which we'll go over in a little bit. This was printed with PETG. It's not regular PLA. As you can see, it's a little bit shinier, but I went ahead and removed this as well. Another model that I printed was this one. Unfortunately, I don't have the video for it, guys, so sorry about that. So this is the other model that I printed. Alright guys, so this is what it looks like once everything's been cleaned off. Let's go and start with this one. This one's a Titan that I printed. And this is all with tree support. I had one hell of a time removing all these supports down here. You can see. But overall, after cleaning it, I say it came out pretty well. The only issue I had was I actually pulled a little too tight on the fingers right there, but the other fingers are perfectly fine. So that's what it looks like after it's done. Now this is the one that we had looked at, and this is what it looks like after the support, everything has been removed. So not too bad, in my opinion. So there you go, guys. These are the models I printed with the support feature. Most of them came out pretty well. I am very happy with it. I don't have any complaints. There's other ones I did. Sorry I didn't record those as I did them. But I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, guys, like always, leave them down below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and do so for more interesting content like what you just saw today. If you like it, thumbs up. If you don't, hey, you don't. So give it a thumbs down, man. It is what it is. But there you go, guys. Again, I hope you found this helpful. And like always, good luck and happy printing.